Hey guys, so if you've followed me for any length of time, you know I'm a really big fan of an earth box. And while earth boxes, which are planters that bottom water your plants and have a fertilizing trough in them, are so great. While they are super functional, they're not beautiful and not something that I'm necessarily going to put on my front porch, which is where we are. And so a few years ago, I decided that a galvanized tub would make a perfect planter if I could just turn it into self-watering. It would be great, because what happens with regular planters is that then I'd have to drill some holes into the bottom and then have to have some kind of trough underneath to hold extra water that would flow out. And so creating a self-watering planter out of a galvanized bucket turned out to be a really easy task. And I've actually used this bucket on my porch for the last 3, maybe 4 years, and I'm just now having to kind of redo it again. So I thought while I took all the old soil out of it, I would show you how I did it. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to use this tray with the corners cut to fit into my oblong galvanized bucket. Perfect. Now I'm going to cut a hole in the middle and a little notch in the corner for my flower pot that's going to use to wick moisture up, and also for my tube. There you go. That's where I'll water. Perfect. The next thing we want to add is landscape fabric, a layer or two, enough to cover. And I'm going to cut a hole in the middle of it so I have access to that little flower pot. And let's go ahead and fill that little flower pot with soil. We want to make sure that that wicking pot, which is the way the water is going to travel up to get the rest of our plants the water they need, we want to make sure that it's filled up with soil and also that it is wet. So we're going to go ahead and water it before we add any more soil to the self-watering planter. And if a little water kind of runs down the side of the landscape fabric, it's totally fine, but we do want to try to keep as much soil out of that water reservoir as we can. And I got some little helpers over here. So I'm just using my fingers to make sure all of that soil is good and moist. Okay, and also adjusting my landscape fabric, because again, once I start adding more soil, I don't want it running down into my water reservoir. Okay, I think that's good. We'll top it off with a little bit more soil. Maybe even a touch more water, but we'll kind of gauge and see. Okay? Make sure everything's fitting pretty firmly, because again, this is going to be holding quite a bit of soil. But this plastic tray really was the best fit. Okay? Adjusting my tube, make sure it's in there well and that the landscape fabric is around it securely. And let's start adding more soil to our planter. This is a pretty good quality potting soil. I love a nice mix. I don't use Miracle-Gro. This isn't that. Something that I can find locally. And but whatever you can find, whatever you got on hand is perfect. So we're going to go ahead and fill that up, and as you fill, make sure that you're pulling up the sides of that landscape fabric again so that it's not going down into the reservoir. Let's speed things up a little. Okay, as you're adding your soil in, the level or the amount of soil that you add is really up to you. I like to buy it in bulk, and then I use buckets of it to fill my planters. Okay, take it all the way to the edges. Typically 6 to 8 inches of soil is great for growing really any kind of vegetables. You're just about ready to add your trench of fertilizer. So this is something I learned from an earth box. I make a trench in the center of my planter, since this one's oblong, and this should feed my plants all season long. Okay, so you add the trench in there of a granular fertilizer. It wouldn't work the same if you're using a liquid fertilizer. You might actually add that into your water reservoir. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and water it in.
Okay, this also helps the soil that we have put in. Let's go ahead and moisten it. Oops, sorry about the camera. And now we're going to top off with more soil. So almost like a fertilizer sandwich. Okay, I'm coming all the way to the top because I do like for my planters to be pretty well full. Smoothing it all the way to the edge. I've got my landscape fabric over as far as it'll go, so I'm not worried about soil getting in to my water reservoir. Okay, now we're ready to plant.
I've got a few things picked out for functionality and color. So I've got some Swiss chard. Okay, this is rainbow chard, so you can see all the beautiful stem colors. That'll be gorgeous. Okay, and then I'm gonna add in this butter crunch lettuce, which is looking a little weak right now, so I'm hoping that adding it will perk it back up. So let's go ahead and plant. I'm still gonna follow even though I'm not using the trough of fertilizer, I'm still going to follow that premise and plant around the edge so it has plenty of room to maybe spill over the side. And lettuces and chard both are very cut and come again, so I'll be able to harvest leaves as I need them but leave the plant in place to continue to grow. So let's go ahead and plant. I like to kind of place my plants around the planter, and you can take off any leaves that aren't looking so great. Okay, so while I'm placing these, I'll tell you, I bought these plants about 2 weeks ago to put into the garden and this planter, and then I got bit by a snake, a copperhead to be exact. And don't know if you've known someone to get bitten by a copperhead, but it really took me out of commission. Like, my foot is actually still pretty swollen, and it'll be 2 weeks in 2 days since I've been bitten. So I wasn't able to get into the garden like I thought I would and get this stuff planted. So it's grown a little bit more than I would have liked. Okay, so I'm just squeezing the bottom of the container here, and they say you're supposed to lift it by the leaves, not the stems. Easier said than done sometimes, though. I totally understand that. Okay. There we go. All right. And so maybe you already know that you want to loosen up the roots on any plants before you plant them. Just a gentle kind of loosening up. Okay, so they're not root bound, because it's really hard for them to thrive that way. Okay. Oh, there's a little extra. Got some flies around here now. All right. So we're just going to put them in. And after I get them all planted, I will give them one more good watering on top, and it'll be the last time that I top water. I'll fill up that reservoir with my garden hose, wait for it to spill out, and then from now on, I'll water through the tube. Okay, which is nice and kind of hidden on the side, so it doesn't stick up and is super noticeable. And this same technique of creating a planter can be used in any kind of container. So my dad had made some actually out of Rubbermaid containers. So and typically raised bed planters like an earth box will have like a black covering over the top that the plants pop through. That's optional if you wanted to do that. My dad has done that in his planters that he made out of Rubbermaid containers using a trash bag. But I don't get a whole lot of the soil drying out on this one because it really only gets morning sun, so I don't go that far to add that part to it. So everything is planted. I'm going to top it off with a little water and then put it in place, because again, once this thing is full of water in that reservoir on the bottom, it's very heavy. So I'll water it through this tube, and then that's how I'll continue to water it all season long. So I hope you guys found that helpful, and you can see the full post on how to construct this in the link below. Subscribe to my channel for more gardening information, and thanks so much guys for sticking with me through this tutorial. Bye.